Call to order the Lowell City Council Planning Commission joint meeting for Wednesday, January 3rd, 6:02. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I call the roll, I'd like to note that we have two new commissioners joining us tonight. John Petrie and Brenda Savoy, and both new commissioners have been sworn in prior to this meeting. With that, I'll call the roll. Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Councilor Harris.
Here.
Councilor Stratus.
Present.
Councilor Weathers.
Here.
Councilor Murray.
Here.
Commissioner Kinsley.
Here.
Commissioner George.
Yep.
Commissioner Trimble.
Here.
Commissioner Petrie.
Here.
Commissioner Savoy.
Here.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Why don't we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have one item of business tonight. And it says there pursuant to Lowell Revised Code, section 9.462, the Planning Commission and City Council are holding a joint meeting for an informal review of the land use application 2023-04 North Highland Plan Development District. Mr. Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. This is a review of a proposed planned development district in the Carroll Street, Highland Lane area. According to our development code, the first step for a planned development district is to go through the approval process is through what's called an informal review. We have the developer with us tonight who will present their project and their program to the commission and the city council. We also have our public works director, city attorney, city engineer, and planner with us tonight to provide staff input on the project. The purpose behind the informal meeting for this type of development is for the decision makers and the staff and the developer to all come in the same room, talk about the project, answer any questions that they may have, ask any questions that they may have, so that both the city and the developer can decide if it's worth the time and investment to go further along in the process. That's why it's called an informal review. At the conclusion of tonight's meeting, if this body is ready to make a decision, you can either recommend approval of the project with or without modifications, in which case the developer would go through the formal process. The formal process has some very detailed information that they need to do, some engineering information, some detailed planning information, and then there would be formal hearings before the planning commission and the city council, just like with any rezoning. Alternatively, this body could decide that this project is not a match for the city's goals and recommend denial. Like I said, the intention behind this sort of meeting is to save time and money for everybody involved. With that, I'd like briefly to introduce, so everybody's acquainted, the city team. If you could just raise your hand when I call you out. We have Matt Wadlington with Civil West Engineering. Matt is the city engineer. We have Max Baker, Public Works Director. We have Henry Hurley, the contract planner with Lane Council of Governments, and we have Gary Darnell, the city attorney. Thank you. So I've had a brief statement. Before I turn it over to the applicant, Henry, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, nothing. You did a great job kind of introducing the project.
Okay, great. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant to introduce yourselves and to talk about your project. And after your introduction, if the fire chief is on, I'd like to give him an opportunity to address his comments so that we could get him off of the call for tonight and then proceed with the much further direction. So at this time, if the applicant could please join us at the table.
Don't want to be right here at this table?
Yes.
Okay.
Clear it out.
No, this is. Okay.
First of all, my name is Wyatt Ledbetter. Guy up on the left, that's Joe. We're the developers that would like to move this forward. Monty is our architect. Carol's on here. She's part of our design team at this point. So you can see on the poster boards over there, that's kind of what we're proposing. Little townhouse style. In the middle, we got some housing development up on the upper part of Highland Street. And then actually on the lower part of Carroll Street down there, we have some ADUs for handicap accessible. They're one bedroom places down there to help out with that. So Joe and I've lived in Lowell a couple times anyway, and so Joe and I grew up in Chilton, Oregon, and so owning a house was pretty important to us. So when we designed these townhouse style houses, what we're going to propose, and I'm just being honest here, what we're going to propose is we need to change the zoning to R3. We need to turn it into a PDD, and we would like to sell every one of those as an individual property. So people have their own home that they're buying and not renting and not have some, landlord taking care of all that stuff. So everything up there we'd like to sell, and not keep it as a rental for us or anybody. We're proposing a park down there to help with that's quite a new bunch of, that's a big development going on. So, we like to have a park in there, and some of that stuff. So that's our development. That's what we're hoping for. We like that town style house. You can kind of see it. And as you can see, they step up a little bit. That actually, we've done the homework on that we had somebody come out and do the survey. So as those step up, that's actually the way that land goes that way. And so, it's nice. It looks great. So yeah, that's our development. That's what we're hoping for.
So to get full disclosure, I live just a couple of miles from here. So my son hired back here, graduated from Lowell High School. So we have a pony in the race. I mean, Lowell's like our head town. This is where we shop. This is where our community's at. We have friends here. So I was pretty excited when most of my work is in Eugene and Springfield. That's what I've been doing for 35 years. So when Wyatt approached me about doing Lowell, I'm like, this is my hometown. So yeah, I'd love to do something here. And I also grew up in construction, and I have 8 kids, by the way. So I have a lot of married kids, and they have a tough time right now buying houses. It has gone through the roof, and it's just crazy how much prices have gone up just in the last 3 to 5 years. And so my son and daughter are living in our basement right now. They both work at the school districts, and they can't afford a house. So that's our main goal, to make affordable house. And when you do the math, having grown up in construction, there's only so much you can do. You can only buy lumber so cheap. You can only buy materials so cheap. The fees are what they are. But the one thing that is negotiable is the land. So once you buy the land, if we can subdivide it, that's what's going to drop the cost down substantially. Does that make sense? Because right now, under the current code for Lowell, without doing a PDD, minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet per lot. That's a big lot. And in Eugene, they're allowing like 4 and 5 and 6 apartment houses on lots that size. And so what we're proposing is 0 lot lines. So the lots are actually a 0 lot line right down the middle. And each of the townhouses are built structurally independent from the other. So people actually, their house is independent. It's not dependent upon their neighbor. But not only do you save a lot of money in the cost because you don't have to side the sides of each unit. Does that make sense? So there's a substantial savings there, but it's also the land. They're buying just that little strip of land, but everybody has a backyard. They have a garage and a driveway and a little bit of green area up front. And then we also put in a park. I don't know if you saw that or not. We thought we really wanted to do something fun that would be nice. And so we have the park being funded by the HOA, be open to the public. We're going to put in a little shelter there where people can have a barbecue or something like that as a play structure for the kids. We just really want to create this kind of a community, and so that's really our goal to bring the cost down. The only way to do it is to actually have the land divided smaller. So that's really our main goal, is to do that. Any questions?
And so these little 1-bedroom units on the right, and so they're going to be for sale as well. They're not rentals.
Well, we could revise them, but right now those are actually stacked on top of each other. So we'd have to do a horizontal lot line screen. It's a little trickier. That's even more complex. Right now the lot lines go straight up and down. If that makes sense to the sky.
We can definitely sell them. It's a little bit more paperwork, But we can definitely get that done. Yeah,
No,
that's our goal, 100%.
Yeah.
We don't,
To sell those. To
We
sell each unit.
each in, yeah,
Right, okay.
Can you
Well-
condo it? You can condo this, can you?
Well, I think it's the same thing, a townhouse, condo. I think it's an individual house that goes all the way to the sky. In other words, there are three stories, so you own everything all the way straight up. You can paint it different colors.
Those are just smaller ones.
she's talking about the ADA.
Right, the ADA is, yeah, I don't think we've got to sell those off individually, but we could sell, they're planning to sell the 12-plex, each one's a 12-plex to someone who has to buy it. We could probably revise that, but the only way we'd have to do it is to stack them. That gets tricky, because to be efficient, you have one on top of the other, and they're owned separately, so then you'd have to almost subdivide it this way. Now, maybe that's where the condos come in. The condos would be stacked on top of each other. And if we can get permission to do that, that would be great. If you want us to do that, we could sell those off individually.
Well,
That's a
it was intriguing to me that maybe there would be some kind of a, you know, a set of units that people could rent. That
Okay.
have, you know, maybe a little lower income,
Right,
um,
yeah, and those are all one bedroom,
or like you said, if they're handicapped.
yes.
Right.
That's not something that has.
And that would be 12 handicap units, and they're fully handicap accessible.
Yeah, and we can have some handicap parking there, with the X to make sure it's banned, because that's all like that.
And we located those off Carroll Street on purpose because that's the flattest area, so that when you couldn't get out of the cars and stuff, you're not gonna take off your wheelchair. We tried to match the units as much as we could to the natural grade, and really, they're pretty much an exact match. So like when you look at these drawings, those are accurate. That's how much slope there is dropping for each of those units. So it's about a 7% slope, which isn't bad. You know, it's,
Yeah, the upper part of Highland, you know, those are all custom built houses up there, because that's a little bit higher than 7%, so.
yeah, it's pretty steep.
Those are very steep. So we're gonna leave those as
Homes.
homes and with the lots, you know, we have them as almost 7,000 square foot long right now, yes. For each one of those.
So would you guys build those homes or will you sell the lots?
Well, we prefer to just be in charge of all of it, yeah. That way we have the same contractor, same color scheme. Yeah, we'll have some color schemes, CCRs, that kind of stuff, and make sure.
And with the proposal too, the developers are going to put in streets too, so we're connecting
Yeah.
the street, so we'll have good.
We'll see.
Right now, North Highlands is a dead end street, yeah,
And so is Carroll.
right, yeah, that's true.
So we're gonna connect that into Sixth Street, and we were told by, you know, some of the city's people already that, and we're gonna go ahead and pave Sixth Street. And that will help with the flow going from,
Traffic.
as far as traffic goes, we can go.
To be honest, we think it will reduce the traffic on the ends of Carroll and North Island. because people don't really have signal.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you have any ballpark in what those townhouses could sell for?
we went over the numbers, and Monty has something similar being built already, and building them, including the streets, it's around 250.
That's ownership, and that's a
That's-
1,350 square foot house.
3 bedroom, 2 bath.
Yeah, 3 bedroom, 2 bath.
That's the middle ones now, you know, the houses we can custom whatever, but yeah, so those, the focus of the 42 of them in the middle would be about 250 a piece to build it. Yeah.
Then I have a couple questions. So, first of all, did you do how did you guys determine this product? Are you just maximizing the space that you have, or did you do a study that says Lowell needs this is what people in Lowell are looking for, is these single units, or is this just was any formal thing done to come up with this
We did not do a study.
or anything? Okay.
Well, part of it's based on, the state of Oregon did a study, and so Kate Brown, about 3 years ago, she's the one that opened up all of this opportunity to actually do these smaller units in the cities. And so it started with just the overcrowding, the homelessness is just a real crisis right now, and plus the inflation of the housing. And so one of the things that we did do is we noticed that Lowell didn't have these things. Now, I have some duplexes that were designed here in Lowell. There's 5 of them that I did probably 20 years ago. But since then, there hasn't been a lot of work here, so I guess it's more of like a gut feel of what I know is happening in the community based on, you know, my kid attending school here and talking to the city officials and kind of in general knowing what's going on, so.
Okay,
that's
so
our-
full disclosure, I do real estate. I'm a commercial real estate broker in Eugene, so I understand residential, moderately, and sometimes enough to be dangerous. However, I understand land use, and, I'm just curious because, yes, these are 1,300 square foot walk-up apartments, so, and I appreciate the ADU, the assisted and accessible apartments. But, you're really narrowing down the market by 3-story units, which, I mean, this, I see it, this is John's Landing in Portland. That's what this reminds me of, is, we don't have anything 3-story in Eugene. 3-story living unit in Eugene, which is there?
Yeah,
Okay,
there's 4 and 5-story stuff, we put elevators in now.
okay, so that was another question I was asking, is there any requirement of you to put elevators or lift?
We did talk to the fire chief, so we're gonna have to sprinkle
Okay, so you are gonna
We're gonna
sprinkler, okay, so that's another one of my questions,
Yeah.
just for fire life
them.
safety.
Fire safety and, being so close, it's not.
Okay, and what about fire escapes on the 2nd and 3rd floor in the living areas? Will there be like additional exterior stairwell or
Right now, we're just complying with the city answering for codes, what they're doing, this is what they're allowed.
okay,
This actual townhouse here, I've done very similar to it, it's already been built in Springfield, it was 3 stories.
okay. Just curious.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, this might be a good time to, let Lon Brock jump in on
Yeah, go ahead. Let's put it in there about. the
fire codes
about the
issues.
sprinklers, whatever, everything else you want to speak about.
Chief Drod, are you with us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hear me?
Yes.
So right now, I mean, I think if I'm hearing what's asking, they're just asking for permission to be looking to move forward. We haven't started looking at actual build concepts, but technically, if they're gonna put sprinklers in there, that's gonna stop a fire from spreading, so having fire escapes on the 3rd floor wouldn't be as necessary as long as we have fire sprinklers in there. As far as the rest of the code goes, it's just gonna be access to the units. Other than that, it just has to be able to meet Northwest Code and the city codes.
Can I ask the chief a question?
Sure.
With that, what is that gonna do to your department's resources? Now we have a 3-story building and several of them in the city, and you don't have a ladder truck yet, correct?
That's
Is
correct.
that-
That's why we're asking for them to be sprinklered so that we
Okay.
can save our community.
Okay,
It's more practical to ask to have these buildings sprinklered than to pay for a $1.5 million ladder truck that I may not be able to keep trained people on to save the community. This is the best way to look at being fire safe for our community.
okay, just double checking, thank you.
And I wasn't sure how much you want to get into technical stuff, but Springfield just started doing this too, the 0 lot lines. And they have a detail, we're probably just gonna copy their detail, and what they're requiring is between each unit, you actually have a concrete board, fireproof board, and a 1-hour firewall on each side. So if somebody wants to even remodel their unit and they tear off the drywall and stuff, they can rewire whatever, they're gonna hit that concrete fireproof board, they can't even actually penetrate to the next unit, and that also is an extra fire protection between units. And that's what they require by code, the buildings have to be independent from one another, they can't share building structural integrity with each other. So they're individual. For that reason, people could still remodel it, rebuild it.
Well, you do the same thing, concrete walls, dividing it.
Yeah, it's a 1-inch concrete wall, it goes all the way up dead center between the units. They won't see it, it's hidden.
Yeah.
Unless they want to like remodel, start tearing the drywall off, then hit it, it stops them from going to the next unit. It's a pretty good system. It's not the cheapest system, but it's a good system. So that's one of the things we can't really scrimp on yet, but you have to do that, the 2-hour firewalls between. And the sprinklers is kind of a slam dunk. And for what it's worth, I don't know if an insurance person's here, but I've been told that the insurance costs about half. If you have a sprinklered house or building, the insurance agents will charge about half as much on insurance. That's a big deal. I mean, I don't know, an average house sounds probably $100 a month, right, to insure your house. And so if you could drop that to 50, yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah. So the fire sprinklers, even though we have to pay for it up front, it'll save the tenants down the road on their insurance costs.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask if there are any more questions for the fire chief.
Anyone?
Any questions for the fire chief? Okay, if no objections, I'll inform him he's excused. Thank you, chief.
I have.
You guys.
Good.
you thought about association dues for this project? And, who's gonna manage that? You guys or?
Yeah, we'll have a homeowner association, we'll take care of that. And as far as the dues go, yeah, we haven't, you know, we just found out about the fire. The sprinklers and stuff, so that every year those have to be inspected and so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of cost there that we're hoping that the homeowner association will take care of.
Okay,
So, yeah, we don't, you know, as a preliminary, we haven't got down to, you know, even the budget is, you know.
do you have, your own mortgage company that's gonna carry the paper on this, or not for you guys, for people that are buying?
I assume they'll get their own mortgage stuff,
Okay.
yeah. Well,
The other thing is, what, there is a garage in them for a car, is that part of the figure of the amount of square feet in these places?
No, garages aren't included.
no,
So the 13, I think it's 1360, I think.
It's 1350.
Yeah, I've got projects going on all the time in my head.
Well, I just, because it's all one unit,
Yeah,
Air conditioned
yeah,
space.
so the garage isn't included in that square footage, no.
I had the, honor, I suppose, or years and years and years ago, to live in Philadelphia, and that's, I've added everything I have there, is row homes. And the technology that in those days wasn't as good as it is right now, but I saw fires in one and not affect anything on the other, on either side.
Yeah.
And people seem to be fine with that. Yeah. The advantage that I see is that I have some tenants that would love to buy their own home. And if this could actually happen for them, I would be thrilled.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are locked in and there's no way in hell that they're gonna get involved in a house.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's why Hono, for us, you know, Joe and I know that the ownership is huge for, you know, that's, you know, we're gonna ask you guys, you know, before this whole project is over, is to let us have 0 lot lines. In which you can see on one of these papers that we have on the back, how those lots line up, which you have right there. So, you know, because homeownership is important, and the only way to do that is to be able to get those lot lines. Close
Well,
together.
that's the role. It is not unlike duplexes, which I actually have a couple of those.
Yeah.
It works pretty well as long as you put carpeting in them so that people on either side don't hear you going up and down the stairs and that sort of thing, so it can be done. The one advantage I see is that with more people in town, we might eventually get our own little bakery downtown here.
That'd be great.
A few other things that could happen, and it only takes people to do that. And developers will see that it would work. And so it's an interesting plan. I'm happy that you brought it in front of us, so.
Well, you know, Joe and I and Monty, we went up and looked at the property about a year ago. And actually Joe's the one that was like, you know, what would look good here? And so we started from then on, you know, we've taken about a year to get to this point to say, this is what. I mean, it's a nice looking unit, you know, this kind of fits in there, you know, in that little piece of property. It's right at 5 acres, so, you know, we're putting a lot of people in there.
We have a few questions for you. Like I said, this is really kind of an informal, just to get the feedback, what you want to do too, because we can still make changes. Like the park, for example, we didn't know if you would prefer as a group that we just keep that under the HOA, or if the city be just taking over the park at some point, or.
I was about to ask because, you know, people are gonna come in there and use it unless there's something. You know, some way to keep them from doing that, I would assume. So I didn't know what your thoughts were.
We're really open to everybody anyways.
It'll be up to you guys before it's all said and done, you know, if you guys want to take it over as a city, you know, we can have that happen. If you want the HOA to take care of the maintenance of it, you know, it makes that fee go up a little bit, but, you know, it's not.
True. If the park took over, if the city took over, then the HOA fees would drop a little bit. So that's the difference.
We've heard in other meetings that there's a surplus of elementary age parks in town. And I'm wondering if you considered maybe making that a basketball court, aimed at slightly older kids.
Yeah. This is, like you said, this is the first of probably many that you're gonna see us. So, you know, if that's the majority, you know.
That's actually really good plug in there. See, I'm a basketball player and I almost drew that in. And then I thought, well, They probably prefer one that's more general for the kids, but now that you say there's a surplus, well, then we can just do the basketball court. Yeah.
I mean, you know, we'll leave that up for, you know, we're gonna,
It's your vote. I mean, just.
yeah, we'll designate it as a park and then we'll figure out how you guys want.
We're requesting, how about pickleball?
Well, you could do pickleball if you made it like a tennis court. type
Right.
With basketball and the end. You could do
Multi-purpose.
pickleball. You could, yeah, you could make it a versatile.
I like that. I see it's gonna be a lot of young families in there and for them to have something to play on. That would seem like that's an advantage, whether pickleball, basketball,
Yeah.
whatever kind of ball.
Well, we wanted-
Well,
We
I know
didn't want a basketball.
with the streets too, you know, that connects all those streets, so people that walk in the morning can now just make that,
Right.
stay close to home and not have to go,
Right.
you know, down gravel roads or, you know, and those are down there and stuff.
A quick question about children. Is this gonna bring a lot of families? Have you done a sizable unit like this before? And about how many children are included in this?
I'd say about half. The one that we did in Springfield, which actually, this is my son, Am, he's the engineer. His house is right in front of one of these units we did. It's 15 of them, and I'd say about half the kids, right? I mean, you see who goes back there. About half of them, they had kids in it.
I'm just thinking about the influx of kids into our school system. We do have several schools, but one of them is at capacity with a wait list.
I see.
The other one is homeschooled slash going into school. And then I don't know how our elementary and our high school, if they have the infrastructure ready to go for that many more kids.
You know, we talked to Lane Electric, we talked to Jeremy about all the infrastructure, you know. So
Well, one thing
it's
is,
definitely gonna. you
Yeah,
know,
they had
it's
to bring in a couple pods in the last couple of years, which cost, several
Have a
$100,000.
charter.
Yeah, we have 2 charter schools, plus the public schools, but. Yeah, they've had to bring in pods in order to accommodate the more kids. So does that mean more pods coming in, less real estate for the kids to play in, do go to school there, so.
has
You
there been-
might be forced to build the bigger school.
I was just gonna say, the revenue you'll get off this is huge. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are offhand per capita. I know when we built our house out here, we paid the Lowell School District specifically, and it was, I think it was like $6,000 or $7,000 was my permit fee, went straight to Lowell, just for my one house.
Which is great. I mean, not a problem.
But I don't have a problem with the tons. My son was going, I was.
Well, I coached out here, you know, it's been a couple of years or so now that they want a state championship, I get my quick coaching and they win it.
And-
Todd
and-
feels the same way.
I know, right?
Yeah, front one, so then there's the.
Pat and I are good friends.
Right,
Property
It
taxes.
was great.
Yeah, it would raise taxes.
Yeah, if you know you're helping with it, yeah, but- and we had a small football team came out there, other you guys.
Anything
Well-
else? Anybody? Yes, please.
A little skeptical about the $250,000 price. And I'm wondering how you're managing that, what quality of a home you're building, things like that, because I don't really think the number one driver of cost is just land. I think there's a lot of other variables that drive the cost. And so hand in hand with that question is, how are you financing the project? Like, once you start it, will you be able to finish it? What if you only are able to sell half the units? What happens if, wow, there's a 40% price increase? How do you define affordable housing? So those are kind of the areas where.
And the 250 was just a building. And so that's gonna fluctuate probably up, obviously more than down. And so that's how we came up with that number, is just from what Monty has done, those other ones.
Yeah, last year, the ones they built, they came in at about the 260 price, and that's in Springfield, which is more expensive for the land, and the fees were more expensive than here. And on that one too, they had to pay more for the land, because I know what the developer paid. And then the third thing is that it was a smaller unit per square foot. Does that make sense? When you actually stack 7 in a row, you actually get another additional savings, because every unit, you'd have to side the outsides of the house and paint it. When you do 7 in a row, you're only siding, painting the ends, so. In other words, these will be cheaper than the ones we already did, and so we're figuring about 250. Yep, well, the other thing is, this is a credit to Wyatt. I'm not gonna mention the name, they're a good company, I do a lot of work on, but it's more a high-end expensive construction company in town. And so I know they charge a lot more than what Wyatt has to charge. He's the contractor, so he can choose what profit range he wants to put in.
Monty, where is that development in Springfield that you
280
mentioning?
Yeah, 287 Deadman Ferry Road.
Oh, okay.
Have you been?
As far as funding, Joe left up corner there, this will be all out of pocket. Joe, do you want to say anything about that? We good with that?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm on the books and can speak, but if I can, I would love to.
Go ahead.
He's the
Awesome.
finance.
So first of all, I just want to say I love Lowell. And so I grew up, as Wyatt said, in Chiloquin, driven by it lots of times. I have a small little lake sailboat. And so everything about this town is just something I've constantly seen. So when the opportunity came to, really find a development, I own a piece of property up there. It's not part of this development. It's right next to it. It's one of the already existing ones. And so I'm very excited to kind of put that in and, get my own boat down there and be part of Lowell. It's gorgeous, as you all well know. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's a fabulous place. And so, I just want to say thanks for hearing us out. And really putting this together, it is definitely hard. I have 2 kids that live in Eugene. One of them, oldest daughter's 26, and then I have a son, unfortunately, just turned 21. But neither of them can afford a house in Eugene. And so it is becoming, and I live in Austin, Texas right now. I've been in Austin about 16, 17 years. And I have seen what happens to limited demand or high demand and limited supply. And so the average house in Austin, Texas is now almost $1 million. That's just crazy as a starter home. That's impossible. And the same thing is happening in Eugene. It's just out there. As you all know, I know I'm talking to everyone, like to find a starter home, it's $500,000. And so there's just those balances and equations to really help someone to find a home. You do have to find the right place that gives it distance, and then you have to find the right mixture. And that's where this hillside is so nice, because on one side you have a hillside where you can kind of put custom homes. They've got a great view. And in the middle, you can put some more family-based, more income-based living. And on the lower side, you can put some apartments, and they kind of match those streets. But it really comes down to finding those costs for sale is really all about, what are the costs to develop it? And that's the core. And so things like having a sprinkler system and some of those will all, of course, add in those costs. So it's trying to find what is that prime way, definitely meet all requirements and be the safest place you can, but then also find a place that is affordable for those families. So it's really on whatever costs go in to get to that $250,000 mark. And that is definitely what our goal is. And as the project goes in, I've been very fortunate. I'm in tech. And so I've sold a couple of tech companies, and my newest one is focused on basically small businesses and driving in small rural areas. So that's an exciting thing that kind of fits Lowell as well. But I've been very fortunate. And so I'll be financing most of it. But as we do it, when you start these phases, there'll really be in 3 phases. But as you go into them, you'll be able to find out real easy what that demand is. And so you can fill them, very quickly. You don't have to do them all if we didn't want to. We could do some where we phase in. You can do pre-sale, so you can find out the demand pretty easy. But this isn't my only place we're doing development, as Wyatt and Monty know. And this is great because Wyatt and Monty and I don't know how many years ago, when I lived in Eugene, we all did development there as well. And so our focus then was building affordable housing. And so building affordable housing means finding the right materials, finding the right layout that you can do. It's Monty measuring and being an architect to design a floor plan that uses the most efficient size of every board. And so you're not wasting any size of those boards. All those things add up to ultimately give somebody the best value. And so in doing, all that and bring it together to bring, ultimately what we can in Lowell is really the idea. So we're financing it in phases. And then what we hope to do is, as our condos, we can actually have people moving in as we're finishing them out. So thanks for letting me speak, but hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you.
So do you have any idea, okay, you're gonna do phases, so how?
Streets first, yeah.
Right, but, so do you have any idea how long you think it's gonna take to?
Well, being honest, from the day we break ground on the streets, I could see it by the time we sell the last one being a 5-year project.
Okay.
Now, that's the phases. If we sell first row, we work our way down.
Right.
Build the custom houses as they come in,
Yeah.
it not to be shy about it, but yeah, it's probably a 5-year project. but-
Yeah. I would.
And one of the things to add why is that the first phase is putting in all the streets. I mean, it's finishing, that base stuff.
We will do we'll do the part of the streets, we'll get all the concrete work or the asphalt work done, and then we'll work on the department of the that.
I have a couple questions for Max. Is that okay?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so do you have, I'm assuming you've looked at this, what's our current, how is this gonna affect our current water situation, water treatment plant, our production, that sort of thing?
So as you guys know, summertime specifically, we are pretty tight on water demand, running constant to keep up. One of the things that was already working in the background with Civil West and the city of Lowell is doing an additional tracer study to get the allowable gallons per minute increased at the water treatment plant while we're waiting for the rest of, the capital improvement plans that we just adopted to come into effect. So obviously there's going to be a demand. As Joe said, it is a staggered, so phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, not all 70 something units at once. But as far as capacity, Suzanne, because that's what you're asking, we're gonna notice it for sure. I mean, this is, we have 505 connections currently in the entire system, so we're adding, a good percentage of that by doing this subdivision. However, I think with what they're proposing, we don't got, half-acre lots with a beautiful garden and big yards. So I would anticipate that the water usage would be what a standard water usage is year-round, maybe a little bit additional. I know they're proposing some green space and a small park, So I think it would be, based on the average, just adding that many more units. Oh, does that answer your question, Suzanne, or?
Yeah, I was just curious on how the current water situation is, and with the changes with the dam and the drawdown and things into the future, we are already looking at being compromised. Am I like, I don't know, I know not to be dangerous, so tell me what you see.
So taking the current situation that we're in, we don't have a demand issue right now. This is the non-demand time, nobody's irrigating gardens and beautiful green yards. So this is our lowest capacity time of year. We get the rain to help us, I guess, keep our grasses green. We're not running the plant 24/7. We're running at 50% speed. So outside of, I would say, June to August, it's not going to be an issue. We have the capacity. We have the studies done. That was the EDU stuff that came back from Civil West. But that doesn't take into consideration the peak demand. And that would be, like I said, the July, August, September. Those are our 3 highest water production months and 3 highest water sale months every year for as long as you can look back. With these changes that we're going to move forward with, maybe the end of the month, but maybe a little bit February, to allow us to be able to go from 200 gallons a minute to 275 gallons a minute. So that is a pretty substantial increase without actually building infrastructure. That's just showing that we can still meet water quality by performing this test. So that would definitely help take down the demand in those peak summer times. So I think it's very doable. And as they said, they were pretty honest, this isn't something that's going to happen, gets approved, they build June and people are living in it by December. So, we have some time and it's going to be tiered and we can kind of see how things go. But as far as the water demand, I am not concerned about the water demand. And the aspect that you're talking about, Suzanne, I'm always concerned about the demand just because I think that's appropriate, especially because there's still some room for the town to grow.
Jeremy, how many developments do we have underway right now that are still waiting to come out of the ground? I mean, do you know the number of roofs that we are anticipating?
Max, do you might know that number better than me.
Yeah, was the number actual units, Suzanne? I didn't hear that last part.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got up here on 4th, we've got Jerry's development over here off of Wetlow and stuff up over here. I mean, what's in the pipeline already?
So 4th Street is complete build out. 100% completed. All C of Os are issued, not living in, obviously, there's 3 lived in. But the ones that are pending, so approved by the city and you guys, but not started, is the mixed use on North Shore Drive. So that the proposed was 10 apartment units up top, so 10 homes technically, and then 2 to 3 businesses down low. So that's 13. I'm going to call them EDUs. And then the other subdivision up on Wetlow was 14 new homes and 3 existing lots. So another 17 EDUs.
Right.
And those have all been factored into the demand, Suzanne, because I knew this question was going to come up. So, you know, we've already wrote the letter saying, yes, we can supply water. Yes, we can take the sewer for the projects that have already been approved, even though they haven't even started. We still have to allot that because they've already been approved.
Okay,
So Max, is the sewer plant gonna withstand all this as well?
The sewer plant, a little bit different on the sewer plant. You know, it's the exact opposite. The sewer plant struggles in the winter, strictly from heavy rains. We are currently actively working on some of the I&I issues where the rainwater gets into the pipes. We had some additional camera truck and stuff. But as far as capacity, the sewer plant, as far as bringing in flow to it, is well over designed to take this and many other subdivisions.
Yes, Maureen.
In the same vein, but a question for Matt with regard to the EDU study that we did, and I'm sorry, I didn't have time enough to go get the water treatment plant study and try and reconcile this stuff, but what I'd be interested in is whether this development is gonna suck up the rest of the capacity, and because there's still some empty lots out there, and that's okay, except that when I moved here, there was a moratorium on building because of water. And so how does that get assigned? I mean, we could permit 78 units, and then if that takes up all the capacity, and then you get another request from somebody who wants a single family, are they, and not all of this is built out, does somebody get in front of the other? How does that work? I wasn't involved in that stuff. I just knew we had issues that way, and so I'm concerned about stopping progress, but then I'm also concerned about taking up all the capacity and not allowing another person to build on a lot they've had for 30 years.
Matt, perhaps you could address that along the lines of the discussion that you, Max, and I had about a month ago.
I guess, Jeremy, I'm not sure how that applies to what discussion we had. Maybe you can refresh my memory, but in regards to the total EDUs that are planned for, you know, we're kind of forced to plan for the state city growth rate. You know, the Portland State University issues a forecast for each county and city within the state, and we are forced to use that as a growth rate. And so that's how we come up with a forecasted EDUs for that study. That being said, that study can be updated at any time, and you can adjust those EDUs further so that you can account for growth that's already happened and still be able to account for future growth. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, though.
I didn't state my question clear enough then. The current water treatment system plant plus this increase based on this tracer study, how many EDUs are you estimating that will service before we need to do the dip into very much of the capital improvement program?
I am not sure the answer to that question. I'd have to look and see. I think like Max said, it's something on the lines of a 10% increase. Max, is that right? 10% increase, and at you know, the current flows. I'm not sure. We'd have to go back and look and see what that equates to in EDUs, and like Max said, I would anticipate that the EDU equivalent of these units is going to be a bit lower because they don't have that high summertime peaks in terms of usage. So
But all that stuff evens out. I mean, that's why you
Yeah.
reconcile for that. That's in the plan that it's mentioned. I just want to be fair to everybody. I don't want you guys to assume that you can build out. And then all of a sudden, it's like, we've got a major problem.
Right.
And that's, you know, you gotta make this pan out. So, but also I don't want, you know, somebody who's held on to something and waiting to retire and then want to build one single home that they've held and they're at the back of the line after 50 other, you know, units go in that. So
Thanks for letting.
well, it's
Yeah.
for everybody.
I know, yeah.
And I'm a win-win kind of person. I want it to make sure I get the economics of it. And
Right.
the last thing we want is for you to get 2 phases in and then go away. That would be, except that you got the streets in, which is good because some of these planned unit developments stuck and the cities are stuck.
Now, I might be speaking out of turn, but knowing Joe as long as I have, probably 25, 30 years, if it looks like they're not selling, he may just slow down and, you know, wait for the market to come back to build the rest of them out. Is that what you probably do? So I mean, even that might be the option.
Well, part of the plan development standards is also having that phase and that you commit to something too, because
Oh, yeah.
again,
We
the
could
city's counting on
Right.
stuff and we don't want to reserve capacity if somebody else can do something. So it's gonna be a partnership,
Right.
certainly, you know.
Okay.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, you threw out the acronym EDU. I don't know what that stands for.
Equivalent dwelling unit.
Okay, so we have ADUs, EDUs, okay.
I'm with you.
Single family house, I'm like, okay, but. So and you said 10% of what Max had said, so are we talking 10% of the existing connections? Is
Of
that,
capacity, Suzanne. So it's a little more than that. Yeah, we can pump at 200 gallons per minute right now. And with the anticipation of the tracer study, we should be able to do 275 gallons a minute. So substantially more water production per day per 24-hour period.
okay, I agree with Maureen. We don't want to, you know, unintended consequences. That's really what I want to look at with this. Because I do a lot of work with Glenwood right now. And Glenwood is an absolute quagmire. Because they've made a lot of changes. People who didn't live in the area came and made a lot of changes, and the city just went, that sounds great, yeah. And what they basically did was they destroyed the area. And the people who built their families and built their lives there were told, because of the changes to the code, that their life's work was of no value. The buildings are supposed to be office, and they're all industrial and heavy industrial. You've got Mirmo and Oldham's and the Brookses and all these other families who basically did their industrial life there. And because of what some people desired, it doesn't work. And then COVID hit and it really doesn't work. So that whole entire swath of Franklin, where Glenwood is the city of Springfield has to undo a bunch of stuff to make it even function and make it and so these people can sell their land and do something with it. But Maureen has a point where we do have a lot of people, a lot of older people who do have plots of land here in the city, and their plan is to build a single family dwelling when they retire. And I would hate for them to be behind this and be told, oh, well, we can't release these for we won't know for 5 more years whether we can give you capacity or not. So maybe that's something we have to flush out in the
Kind of
no
two-edged sword.
unintended.
Yeah, two-edged sword, because they don't build either, then this land, the opportunity for people to buy affordable housing also won't be able to take advantage.
Well, I think if we can get the estimate on what we can currently do and then relook at that. We did already, but God, I can't keep that stuff in my head. I'm not an engineer. Then it would help you with phasing and it'd help us with being able to still be supportive of the whole community. You know, so again, I think it's a dual thing. We don't want to, you know, shut anybody out. Just plan it.
Yeah,
Make it work.
we're the same, yeah, we're on board with that. Yeah.
I hate to admit this, but I used to live in California, and near Sacramento, they had a real problem with water. And so what they did is, I remember the house I bought down there for $130,000, but the water meter for that house was $10,000. it didn't cost $10,000 for the meter itself, but the idea of the meter. And that went directly to help develop greater water services. So there is a way out. It's not a SDC type thing. It is a direct shot to the department that's going to service. So something to think about.
Well, that's basically what an SDC is.
No, well,
Or you're saying it's to general expenses rather than future capital expansion
yes, yes,
on top of probably another
yes.
$6,000.
And the SDCs are pretty hefty around here now, but not as bad as it could be in several other cities. But I think that if we see that we're getting into this, we have to develop some kind of plan so that we can take care of it, you know, before it starts getting out of hand. And I think the one way to do it is directly taking care of the problem. So,
The problem is that capacity at the water plant isn't overnight,
well,
so we'd wanna look at it.
yeah, but as you start to see it, if we fill it up, then we're using all the other third that he's putting on, or that he can, then there's 75 gallons a minute or whatever it is, that he can supply. Now it's 200 gallons a minute, I think, and he's going to 275, so almost a third more.
But we don't know how many EDUs the plant capacity is right now. Not, I mean, I think we have that information, but we don't have it in front of us. It'd be
Okay.
helpful for you guys to know that too.
So that's where we're trusting Max. He's done the research, right?
Well, it's in
And
the,
and I guess, and thank you for the conversation. I guess I understand the question a little bit better now. The water treatment plant right now is very close to at capacity. You know, Max and his team are down there during the summer at 22 hours a day, making that plant run. So at 500 connections, if we can get another 30% capacity by redoing a tracer study, we could conceivably get another 150 units out of that based on that 30% increase in production capacity.
That would cover us. That would cover us.
It's close though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's close.
It's a little too
We're gonna have the water rights?
Someday.
Water rights aren't an issue?
Water rights are not an issue. Nope, we're not even close to using our water rights.
that's the good news.
So along the line of unintended consequences, I'm back to the affordable housing. So say 2 years from now, you put, or a year and a half, you put some of those units up, you sell them for $250. But hey, we've had instances where there's price wars, and I can come in from somewhere and I can say, oh, I can give you $260 cash. No, I can give you $280. No, I can give you $320. So now you don't have affordable housing. What you created was
frenzy.
and or I can buy it at $250 and then I can resell it, you know, in another 6 months if things shift, which they're volatile, they're changing, and then it's not affordable housing. So mostly when we talk affordable housing, it's like a partnership between subsidized, you maintain the price, you have rules around how it can be sold on, you know, so I'm a little skeptical.
I would
A little
say,
cynical maybe.
I would say if you have $250,000 cash, you're not gonna go into a roll. In other words, this is gonna attract the people that really can afford to go into a roll. It isn't ideal living. It really isn't. It's nice that they have a home that they can call their own. And they may increase in value after the years, after they're all settled and sold. If somebody wants to move out, the prices may rise, and they may not. That's real estate.
I disagree a little bit,
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
honestly, if
market
I'm
is
coming up from California and I can buy a little house, which I love the idea, and I don't have yard upkeep, I don't have a lot of, maintenance I have to do, I can fly into Eugene, jump in my car.
We're not gonna advertise in California. We don't want to.
It doesn't matter, they've already discovered us, we're here, where we are. But I think they can't control that. A developer really can't control that unless it is that nonprofit like we did
Right.
with St. Vincent de Paul up here on Wedlow, that development where you have a watchdog who's in control. And I think that's more than you guys and, you know,
Well, that kind of goes along with one of the concerns that I saw. When you look at it, it looks great, it's beautiful, it's rose. But say there's somebody down in California owns a $3 million house. Right out, he's gonna take this $3 million, he's gonna come up, he's gonna buy that whole row.
Yeah.
And he's not gonna live in any of them because he's gonna rent them out to make money. And
oh,
he's
yeah.
gonna buy, so I know we can't do anything about that, or can we?
Their HOAs can, have you guys looked at that?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Is there
Yeah.
a way to come in and get?
Yeah, their HOAs can keep you from, just stayed with a girlfriend who owns a condo in Bend. Their HOAs don't allow for any subletting, and they allow for a 6-month long-term rental, but they don't allow for you to do VRBO. or
Okay, so we're not gonna get into like a large company coming in and buying them and just renting them out, and now we have an apartment building, not affordable homes. Joe, like I said, Joe and I grew up in Chillicothe, as poor as you can grow up. And we would definitely keep an eye on that, because that's kind of what Joe does, he's had some big companies, and when they start bringing in big corporate people, then he's done with it, but that's not what we do.
And to add some context, I mean, basically, I'm that guy you're talking about. And I don't want to go in and own apartment buildings. And so that's where I'm saying from this point of view is that if you build apartment buildings and you do cap them, it will change Lowell a lot. I've done those here in Austin, Texas. And unfortunately, if you do that, it changes the neighborhood, not for the better from what I've gone through. And that's where it's like the balance of doing this is really that heart is that we have found to make them individual homes that people can own. And I know you talked about prices going up. I guarantee they will. Oregon is just a sweetheart place to live right next to this hole that has 40 million people, and they're all moving up. And that's reality. I can't stop that as much as we'd like to, build a fence down there, but that's reality. But you also want that to happen. So we definitely can control who we're selling them to. And that's because we're doing this. So we know that. And once somebody owns them, you want them to increase in value because that's their equity. I want families to have a home. I want them to have an equity. And what's great about this versus short-term renters. So if you look at BlackRock and you look at where they're going after large short-term rentals, where they're owning large areas, they like to control the whole area. They're going after large neighborhoods in Atlanta. This wouldn't be a target for them. But one of the real reasons it's not a target for them is because Lowell's small enough. It's 30 minutes out of Eugene and Oregon, or Eugene and Springfield. And so this is a commuter area. So if you do get this place, there's a lot of economics to stay. And so that's what's really great about the area is if you were to do this in Eugene, what you're talking about very well could happen. And so they would sell, it would change. I mean, once it's out there, you're like, the place is growing so fast that, before long, Eugene's twice the size as it is. And so Lowell basically having that 30 minutes distance is one of the best things for Lowell, is to say we're out there enough that if you're living here, that's what you want. You want to do a little commute. It's a gorgeous drive. You want a little family place. You want community. And so you're really going after that. Whereas if you make it rentals, you're going to have people that, basically 30 minutes is a long ways for a drive. So they're probably not going to drive. They're going to stay around town and they're probably not going to be employed. And so there's those balances that you go up that I definitely want to find those. But in what we have done in a history of doing this for 30 some years, we have found the more you can give people ownership of a home, they take pride in it. And that's really the key thing, is just to give them something to own, and they will do the best that they can as an owner versus making it a rental. It's a whole different scene. And so that's why, as that guy, I don't want to go in and start with apartment building. In fact, we've done some in Junction City, we've done some all over, and we're doing them right now in Eugene. And trust me, they're not great neighborhoods. As soon as they rent them out, I'm just like, these are like just, great. Now I've got one of these tenants again. And so we have lots of those. And that's where this is a different case. It's really about finding that ownership to give, that opportunity to the kind of first-time home buyers.
Right, yeah, that's good. I've only lived in Lowell for a year. And I'll probably die here because I love it out here, and I can see where you're coming from, where people are going to say, yeah, this is I don't mind that 30-minute drive, because by the time I come around that corner and I see that lake, I can just take a deep breath and put work behind me, and I'm home. So
So it could appeal to, yes, the first time home buyers, it's affordable. They don't have to do a lot of maintenance because there isn't a lot of handyman people around as much as there used to be back in the day, right? So if they can go home, have their own place, and be able to take their kids over to the park before dinner, that's wonderful. I just wanted to keep that feeling and not the opposite of, like you're saying, in Eugene, in a bad neighborhood with 50 units, you know, with 300 people stuck in them, you know.
Exactly. And that's where we veered from saying, do we want to put in apartments? And that's where we're like, this is not really, apartments are not going to win here. That's going to drive. And I'm literally have a lot next to this. So I'm going to be neighbors with all these people. So I definitely have a concern about the same thing.
Got a question here.
Seems like there's a lot of concern that would be ameliorated by an HOA, but my question for Jeremy, can we mandate they follow through with an HOA? Like, it's not that I don't trust you.
We have to,
You're saying
you have to be an HOA with the zero lot lines.
Oh, okay.
For the plan development, you have to do it together.
Oh, okay.
That'll be part of their submittals through the formal processes. They'll have to present to you the actual plan. The bylaws, the CCNRs and the like.
You have to do, that would be nice if it was independently owned, which that's what they own is the lot. And they'll have their own deed through Lane County, but they share the same driveway, so that's where you have to collect HOA fees to keep the driveway up and pave it. I mean, it's not like you can pave just a little strip right in front of your house because the next neighbor, where he doesn't pave, whatever. So you have to have HOAs from these types of. And we can put those additional things in if you want to, some of those things about, I like the idea of not being able to flip it or sell it or. Because we really want homeowners here. My kids, I'd like to have my kids move out here to buy one of these. I really would. I'm being sincere about that. We really do want to get low income housing.
I think
Yes.
those kids.
Yeah.
Struggling.
Right.
There's, like the schools, great place for the teachers that can live
Right.
close and yet they.
Right, right.
Yeah, well, and stuff, the workers around town, and all that stuff.
I have page 9 of the plan. I have some real concerns about the runoff plan.
Right, okay.
So I live on D Street, so
Okay.
the next street goes from Carroll Street. And when Carroll Street, the development that currently exists on D Street, adjacent to D Street was developed, a large amount of fill was brought in and houses, specifically the ones on the west side of Carroll Street, were put to an elevation that actually raised their lots above D Street and houses that exist on the street. When they put those in, they didn't put any drainage along that line. That's actually a long, narrow strip of some private landowners property. It's not belong to the city. It's not belong to either the homeowners on D Street or the homeowners on Carroll Street. So on page 9, you guys, and what they did was they took all the road runoff and they ran it straight back and just into no ditch and it run, and it's basically gigantically increase the amount of water on everybody on each street's property. Some are affected more than others. There's all what that hill, that whole development used to be was 3 seasonal creeks that ran and they hit a berm that was just the back end of that. And then it ran down to that culvert you guys are identifying here. Well, that ditch no longer exists. So now the grading is actually easier to get downhill onto the house on Peach Street. And I'm assuming the 67-inch one is the one that runs on the north side of 4th Street. That is buried. So it's been there. It used to be not buried, and they buried it all now. But there's no, from the distance you guys are identifying from your little L section, right? Some water runoff maybe directly to existing. There, I don't see that as being a functional plan.
Okay.
I see that all you're doing is adding to water that's coming off the roof and the drains and the gutters coming off of the house to Carroll Street, and adding to the load that's going on B Street, because the gradient's gonna find its way easier before it ever gets to 4th Street.
That's where the studies come in, and so we have Tony Fabro, I don't know if you guys have dealt with him before, but he's the one that will do all the analysis, and everything's calculated by math. They can actually calculate in the worst storm drains, what's the maximum amount of water, and then we have to actually accommodate for all that. So what we'll do is we'll analyze that and see if we can put any into it, because we don't know until we do the tests and the study.
Right.
And then whatever we can't, then we can redirect it to other areas. Worst case scenario, by the way, on this plan, this is the best we can do as far as affordable housing. We might have to give up some of the units and actually put in drain ditches and stuff like that.
This isn't a ditch going down here. This is whatever people have done to the back of the property, wherever the two homeowners.
Right.
On these, you can carry it up, it's done without.
Tony, we've talked to Tony, Tony hasn't even started because, we can't start something if we don't know which direction we're going. No, if this is the direction that we all, then we will have a plan for sure that will accommodate everything.
And it has to be signed off by the city.
Yeah.
We'll be involved. in it.
Well, you say that, but, and this isn't the current administration, but you say that, but the developer before you guys was not controlled like that.
Oh, well, Springfield Eugene would never let us do that. You can't get away without all of this being approved.
It's also when the developer is the city administrator.
And we have
We're just pretty strict rights.
What about the addition of more retention ponds?
I'm willing to go with whatever works.
Just because I see some, like, there's a grass area.
So without any houses on that hill at all, there's a large volume of water, groundwater that comes down off that hill. I mean, obviously, we've got the bead working its way down. You add road structures and parking lot areas and street areas and sidewalks and hard non-penetrable surfaces and permeable surfaces. And it just increases that amount a lot. So.
And Tony's amazing. He'll figure it out. He will. There's some ditches across. Not a concern in the world that we won't take care of the groundwater.
And there's one more option we can do that Ranch Engineering has done for us before successfully, and that's they put in dry wells, and it's under the driveways. So the roads are coming in, they just put the round rock there, and they calculate it to absorb all that water during the heavy rains, and so that keeps it right on site. So that's one of our backups. We have like 3 options, and we're gonna explore all of them, and find out which one's the best. But I promise you we'll take care of it. I mean, we're just used to doing it. That's how we do it. That's where we get sued, because I mean, if we don't do this and you start flooding your neighbors, you're gonna get in trouble. So that's one of our big concerns, is to make sure that's done correctly.
And we have enough property there to get this done.
If we have to give up a lot or like one of the units, we will. That's what it is. This is the best we can do. We can't fit any more than this. So we wanted to show you the maximum. Rather than actually come back and add more later, we thought it'd be better to take off. We have to take it off for these exact reasons. And that would be at the water runoff is the concern that's what would cause us to reduce the units, is if we would use the land for water. Retention.
I have some questions more along the editing. I see 3 through 44 is going to be part of an HOA.
What page were you on, Tom?
What's that again?
Page 2.
Page 2 of 9. In the pamphlet here, this spoke just of an HOA. Then there would be a island HOA. Well, how about 1 and 2? Is that going to be part of a HOA or not to begin with? I know you're talking about possibility selling it, but I just wasn't sure.
That's a good question. So now those ones, we don't have to do HOAs, because if we keep it the way they are, and that's really capitalizing on 1 unit, they're probably gonna be owned by 1 person. And because the road is right down the center of the property line, each owner will be responsible for their half. So whoever owns it, they're gonna be responsible to pay to get part of it. So they wouldn't have to do one HOA for those. But for the 0 lot, that's only.
That's required. Okay, that is required.
So we weren't planning to do any HOA.
What about the homes?
Homes are just independent homes, just like any other home, private.
We would have to follow the CCNRs and stuff, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there would be.
Well, there's no cleaning.
Okay.
You can have both CCNRs and.
And the HOAs I've been involved with, usually it's the owners. It's easier just to do it that way. They have like a committee of 3, and it's 3 owners, they can vote, everybody votes in the whole HOA, so you have 42 owners that can vote. And a lot of times they rotate. I've seen some where, somebody doesn't really want to do it, but there is going to be a bank account. Someone will be in charge of managing the money, and then they vote on how to spend the money, whether it's time to improve the road and things like that.
Or put the basketball.
Yeah, put the basketball.
The other on the second one, note under 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The first one says 1 and 2 each will each.
Yeah, okay,
And the next one down says 1 and 2 will.
okay.
It's
Mr. Thank you for catching that.
just an editing
Yeah,
error.
appreciate it.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Well, I know that. But she didn't look at this.
Oh, it's so- Thank you, Marty, so.
It's her fault.
She is always catches that. So.
Whenever we get to page 9 of 9, We, you can just click off on mine if you want to say.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we have B, which is a septic stub, whatever,
Yeah.
and we have G, which is propane, proposed transformer. And G is here on Highland Street.
Yeah.
And G is also in the middle of
Oh, no, it's just.
Highland Street.
You're good.
And this one should be, I take it that should be B.
Yeah, it probably is.
Okay, that's.
Well, let's see, what would that again? The G is definitely.
G is right.
It's probably when I carried off to decide to do something.
So anyway,
I appreciate that.
so B is probably that. All right, like I say, I just,
Those are easy questions.
that's the reason I saved them to last.
I appreciate that.
The mayor will edit your final.
We'll take care of those when we do the.
Okay.
I'll send it to you next time. Before
Just some of it. Yeah, right. We have any other questions for these folks?
It is, you know, and I understand there's some concerns, especially with who comes first if we get down to, you know, and. We're here for you guys as much as we are, you know, for first home buyers, for ourselves, you know, this is something that we've talked about for a long time, you know, something like this, and Lowell is perfect for this, for us. We love it. I've lived here, like I said, a couple times. And that's what brought us here when we were able to get this property. It's like that.
And we're not listening again. We built our forever die. My house is handicap accessible, so I'm staying in it. So we're really handicapped still on the dying.
So if you want to downsize.
Yeah, that's show how many can take when these eventually.
The only other concern I had was with parking with the townhouses, because as it was acknowledged, these are generally gonna be commuter people. We don't currently have a lot of jobs. Hopefully there will be some self-employed, you know, in-house, but the idea that we got a 3-bedroom and only 2 parking spaces and one is a garage in a 1,300 square foot house, so you know that's gonna be full of stuff. So, and there's no other parking there. So they're all gonna be out on Carroll and Highland. What's your thoughts about that?
When we talked to Jeremy and some of the guys earlier, you know, we're giving them 2 parking spots and we're not okay in the fact that they can park on the street. So they get 2 parking spots. So I don't know.
So is there no street parking?
Well,
Not that
I don't think we
there's
can
no-
count.
Yeah, we just don't want to count it per
Okay.
unit.
The rule of thumb, like in Springfield, Eugene, is 1 parking per unit. I think that's too small, and this will shock you.
Especially as a commuter.
Eugene did away with it recently, no parking, and I don't agree with that at all, but their thought is they wanna force people to start taking buses and riding bikes and whatever. You're crazy not to have at least 1 car parking. We did 2, we doubled what the code is, so. But yeah.
So you can address that maybe in the HOAs?
Oh, not to park on the streets, you mean? or-
Yeah.
Well, just, I mean, if you're gonna have 2 cars, one of them's gotta be in the garage then.
If you're gonna have 2.
Right, yeah, that's
All your
true.
boxes
Yeah, we could do
down
that.
and loaded.
Definitely
Yeah,
do
sure,
that.
we could do that.
I don't know, I hate
We
to
don't want
be
broke down trucks.
big brother, but I just don't want it to spill out,
100%.
you know, and then trash up the neighborhood.
That's what the HOA is for, to keep track of that stuff, you bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that too, that was the concern.
especially because we're a commuter today, I hope that changes a bit, and with high-speed internet, I think it has a bit, you know.
And just so you know, we oversized the garages. It's a deep garage. And I did that because I know people are gonna put stuff in it. I didn't do the little compact garage.
Well, and half the people don't, they put a wall and put another bed in it.
Yeah, sure they shouldn't.
Oh, we
We'll
don't
make that part.
They're doing that in the Pierce property.
Well, that's why we tried to give them 3 bedrooms. They already have 3. We hope that's enough.
And we know that the bus comes out, so we even, you know, we get the bus to stop by the park and, you know, no.
Good luck.
Yeah, somebody who drives to Eugene every day, and it's not, life just doesn't work that way. That's why people live in Eugene, because they don't want to commute. You live out here because you know that you might have to commute, or likely you are going to commute. So, I mean, it's a great idea that Eugene is no parking and everything else. I don't believe that's realistic here. And I think that the parking is going to be an issue. And we don't, no, I know he said, I was referring to his comment, Eugene just did away with parking.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
It
So
is
it is, well, okay, never mind.
Well, Eugene used to require, when we did these like 5 years ago, you had to provide 1.5 parking spaces for every unit design out of like, I'm like 0. Where people are park their car, like, well, we're hoping they'll take the bus or taxi or whatever bike. If people aren't gonna do that, they're still gonna own a car, and then it's just gonna crowd the streets with cars. I don't agree with them doing that. I'm just saying that's a great point. We don't be ready to garages. The garages are actually about 14 by 23.
14 by 23.
Yeah. I think we count that, let me look and see, 'cause, yeah. Oh, no, these ones are actually the 12 by 23. It's 24 feet deep on the outside, 23 feet deep. Average car is about 15 feet long. So we even put a little, like we're putting the garbage can in the back, so people can see the garbage cans, and then have a little, if it was mine, I'd put a little, countertop and cabinet, because I want toys in my garage.
Where are you gonna put the water heaters?
The water heaters are actually inside the house in the closet. You can see the closet.
It wouldn't be prudent to put them out in the garage, I'll tell you why.
It says they're in the garage. It says, this is the garage, they're right here in the stairwell. So it's underneath the stairwell.
The more energy efficient in your house, because then the warmth of the house.
I don't need to. My own experience, when having them in the garage, and get better policy. The water damage, when the water damage.
Well, they're on the ground floor, we took a pan and had a drainer outside.
Whatever.
A couple of charging stations for electric vehicles.
They can do it in the garage. We can definitely do it.
It is the future.
And we just had washer and dryers in the hall, and we all have washer dryers.
Those folks reach down. Not with your bad.
Yep.
Well,
Okay. Right? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I have just for reference, off-street parking requirements on the screen here for multiple family. There's 1 unit, 1 required for each dwelling unit, just for your reference again. Also, call your attention to be determined needs. If the parking issue is something you're concerned about, there may be an option for a parking demand analysis technical memorandum. So I just, like I said, thought I'd bring that to your attention.
So the code's 1, right? The code is 1.
Correct.
Yeah, we did 2, so we doubled it. Without counting Lincoln Street.
What are you gonna do with the visitors? They come to visit.
That'll probably be the street.
And is it gonna be one side of the street or the other, or will it be both sides?
Well, what I've seen that's worked successful, these are pretty wide streets, by the way, but it's better if you just mark one side, no parking. And that way, they don't park on one side, the 2 cars can still pass.
Yeah,
That'd be better.
Like
We don't
this?
have.
Yeah, like this one through here.
That's more,
I think that would be great.
better than what we use not having that, we wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's good.
And we have. Yeah. Well, take care of that.
Just to.
Any other questions?
We get to having a part.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I believe it's appropriate if the city attorney or our city planner have any comments.
Yeah, we'll bring them in.
Jeremy, I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Jeremy, I'd just like to point out, at the time the zone change comes into R3, the city also has to adopt the PUD overlay zone. And the development code prefers PUDs to be 5 acres or larger. So what the code requires is that the city make special findings why this PUD is slightly less than 5 acres. Not a big deal, it's just a sort of procedural hoop that needs to be gone through.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Okay, I was gonna say something about the park and the parking and living across the street from Paul Fisher Park. We do have a lot of people who drive down to the park to have their kids play on the playground. Now, they're little kids, so they're not gonna drive themselves or walk or something. A lot of them do, but most of them don't. So depending on what you do in that park, I think is gonna drive the requirement for some parking. Yeah.
And I think we have a few, but yeah.
And if
Yeah,
it's
that's something-
basketball court, you're gonna have a bunch of guys out there, they're gonna come down. And then afterwards, they're gonna wanna crawl to their car. Oh. I think we need a first aid station.
Yeah. You get to man it.
Huh?
You get to man it.
Oh, no, I've seen them on basketball courts. Yeah.
We have room to put a couple more in.
So I just, yeah, food for thought. Did you need anything from us, Jeremy?
I believe, a decision from this body is necessary tonight. It sounds to me, based on the conversation, that the planning commission and the council are interested in moving to the next step in the process. Is that fair?
I'll make a motion that we take photo on that.
Okay, at this point, in that case, Mayor, I'd like to ask our city attorney or planner if they have a recommended motion to move forward.
Well, if I heard right, there was one commissioner that didn't want to make a recommendation tonight.
Yes,
So you could offer both of those motions, one to make a recommendation and then one to table it for further discussion. So the motions would have to be seconded.
Yeah, that's fine.
Also, I think
Further discussion.
each body needs to make a separate motion.
okay,
I'll second Phil's motion to, I'll just second Phil's motion. I forgot where we were.
could you please restate that motion, Chair Kinsley?
I believe the motion was to move
Yeah,
forward.
to proceed with taking a better look at this. It sounds interesting. And so I'd make a motion that we tell these guys that we're willing to play ball with them, or whatever, however we want it.
How do you want to word it?
Okay,
Wow.
this is this would be my recommended motion.
Okay.
It would be to approve a motion for preliminary approval of the application in principle.
So moved. So seconded. How's that?
I couldn't have ever said it better myself.
Or red.
Depends on if Monty's typing it, evidently. You can check it.
The call for the vote is this, the planning, or did I miss it?
The planning chair needs to call.
Oh,
Call
call for the vote.
Yes,
Do you want to call the roll? Do you want,
They don't, we don't.
call for everybody in favor.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Well, John.
Thank you. Sorry. That's for. It's been a long.
Motion by council,
Yes.
Um. So I make a motion to approve a motion for preliminary approval of the application.
we have a motion to second to approve a motion for preliminary approval of application in principle. Other discussions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I called Jeremy earlier. I didn't have time to do it any earlier than that. When you read the code section that talks about these overlay districts, and it talks about this process, it implies to me that we're deciding in this informal review that it meets the standards in the code. I'm not comfortable with that because I haven't had enough time to look at that. What we've talked about tonight in this informal discussion and review is that we will look at that further. So I want to make sure that my personal vote to go forward in principle is just that. That it's not approving anything that's on record here and that it's all subject to review, both ways.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That we
Jeremy?
make this.
Jeremy,
Go ahead.
the code talks about, in this process, the planning commission and the city council are giving conceptual approval. Conceptual approval based on the standards in 9.462. So it's not a final sort of factual approval, but conceptually, the various elements that the code requires you look at have been presented to you. And basically, you don't see that anything that's you couldn't live with conceptually is what's presented.
Then should preliminary be changed to conceptually in the motion to approve?
Gary, the sentence that I had a concern about is it says such action shall be based upon compliance with the intent of the city's comp plan, the intent of city development standards, and the extent of deviation from standards proposed in the PDD. So that's the only sentence that, I don't know what that means. I understand.
And I'm not sure either, but section 9.462 talks about the conceptual plan. And
yeah, it's C2.
It says the planning commission and city council will be scheduled to determine if the requested PUD conforms to the city's PD requirements and is conceptually acceptable to the city. And that their proposal addresses the following elements. It doesn't say that the proposal meets all of those elements, but it addresses them.
Unless we're on the record with that, because C2 is where I read from in that same section. So I just want to make sure we're all clear. That's all. I want to make sure you know what I'm saying and let the chips fall.
Step one.
Yeah.
I was just confused.
Yeah.
We don't.
That one, does anyone have any strong feelings against that?
That's a waste of your time.
Right.
And it's kind of.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone does, and I haven't heard anything from the public either, so.
That's not, it's not a
It's
puzzle.
not a public.
It's not public, okay.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
I think you gotta remember, this is just to say we're interested
Right.
and to give them to go ahead to spend some money.
Let Joe write a check.
Yeah. And bring it to the planning commission
Yeah.
so that they can start to vet out every.
Yeah.
Job.
Because there was a lot of concerns that we
There's a
now
lot.
really never, we can get these answers, but if it's a no, then it's good, we don't need to do that.
Right. But I think it's. Yeah, maybe go.
Any other question, discussion on this one?
Thanks in advance, and thanks in advance for all your work on this planning commission.
All those in favor of motion to approve a motion for preliminary approval of the application in principle, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Anything else, Mr. Cottle?
I believe that covers it.
Then we're adjourned at 7:30.
All right, everybody online, thank you for joining us. Good night.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
There's gotta be some more. We're gonna get very well more than that. Anybody want to help?
It's my word.